folks, Josh Knight the First here with another episode of Writer Rewind, coming to you with episode 18 of the series. Let's get right into it. So this week on Kamen Rider Geo, we're going to be dealing with more of the fallout from this new woes showing up, not so much focusing on Shinobi, but really more of the motivations behind the new woes. And now we see that the show's actually answered something that I was talking about last week about making the differentiation between the new one and the old one. I know I came up with names for them, but apparently the show has answered that for us, so we don't have to worry about it as much. Another thing I do want to focus on is actually the development of Sougo's character this week. As we see, at least for me, I'm starting to see bits and pieces of the things that people should be worried about in terms of him eventually becoming Omageo. Now at the outset of the show, we see that the current woes, Black Woes as they call him, is visibly shaken up by the appearance of White Woes, the new one. Now the differentiation is made by Sougo. We see that very early on, that Sougo is actually taking a lot of charge in this episode. Hey, we need to go ahead and address another Shinobi. Hey, let's get these names taken care of. Hey, I need to get back out there on the field. Now I do appreciate that we're starting to see Sougo be more headstrong, but I'm not sure how natural that feels. I do like seeing that in his character, but at the same time I'm wondering whether or not that's just an unnatural thing, be it because that's happening because of White Woes writing it out in his book, or if that's naturally something he's starting to develop because he sees just how much is on the line because of his trip to the future. Now understandably, Black Woes is more in trouble here because White Woes has taken his position as being the smartest guy in the room. He has all of the information, or at least if he doesn't have the information, he can edit all of the information as he sees fit, because now he's not really in a position of power anymore. Black Woes needed to make sure that the Day of Oma happened the way he saw it to make sure that his timeline was preserved, but now White Woes is here doing the exact same thing, but for Geiz. And of course, the whole point of this episode is the idea of this alternate timeline, seeing that we've got Shinobi here when he shouldn't be here. Now to that extent, we see that Schwartz was the one to go into the alternate timeline to go ahead and get that watch made and bring it back here, but because certain things haven't happened in a certain order yet, that timeline is locked off to everybody else. We do see that Tsukuyomi and Geiz do try to get to 2022 to understandably get the watch that they need, but they can't cross over because certain things haven't happened a certain way yet. And we see that the key to that is going to be Sougo. Sougo's the person that can change the future in one direction or the other, which means he's still very important, but he's still being manipulated by other people, and that's dangerous. Now to be fair, he's not the only person being manipulated in this episode. We see that Rentaro is being coached by Schwartz, telling him, oh, you're basically undefeatable. This is the way you'll get the power that you're seeking. Now eventually we do see that Sougo will appeal to Rentaro's better nature and better way of seeing things that will eventually set him on the path to wanting to be an ally of justice, eventually wanting him to become a common writer for himself. Now once we do have that conversation between Rentaro and Sougo, we see that Sougo is trying to appeal to that nature, and Rentaro has been going through reset after reset after reset from Schwartz, because essentially if they don't have the other corresponding watch, yeah, he basically is undefeatable, and Schwartz's plan makes a lot of sense. Again, this is another episode where I have to give it up to the Time Jackers. Their plans are way more thought out, whereas everybody else is just kind of flying by the seat of their pants. Now I'll get back to the motivations in this episode, but I do want to go ahead and talk about the fights and the effects. So we do have two major fights, one kind of spilling over into the other, the first one being Geo versus another Shinobi that I want to focus on. Now that's a very basic fight, and really it's more about the conversation that's had there, but the effects in that part are a bit troublesome, specifically with the second rider kick that we've gotten from Geo in this entire series, and it's kind of sloppy. If you look there, they try to hide it behind effects, but you can see the wavering of the suit actor there, and it's not really as clean as it could be. The second thing is the really obvious wire work once Woes transforms into his rider form, and we see him starting to use some of this power that he's gotten. Again, I wish it was less obvious to us that it's happening. Now, I do understand, again, this is a show that's aimed at kids, and they're not looking for such things, but really for the people watching along with it, you would think your work would be a little bit more neat and not so noticeable. The whole thing here is suspension of disbelief, and it's hard for me to have that when I can see you holding onto a wire, or I see the wiggle that you're doing there when you can't really clean it up. Now in that second fight, we do see that Woes, by way of Sougo making sure that Rentaro is on the path to eventually becoming Shinobi, that allows him to make a Shinobi Mirai watch, which is going to be very important, and we're told that in the finale of the episode. So we see that Woes is going to use this watch in a transformation he's calling Futuring the name of the new writer. So everything that we see here as far as a form change goes is going to be featuring Shinobi, featuring Quiz, and eventually the third writer that we're going to meet in this timeline. So we see that once Woz uses the featuring Shinobi form for himself, it's basically just the same powers of Shinobi, but Woz. And we see the use of the G-Con Despear, but in sickle mode. Now, I do really like the idea of a sickle. Usually that would be a villain's weapon, and we haven't quite confirmed that Woz is a villain one way or the other, but for what it's worth, I just really like the concept of a sickle weapon for a rider. Now, in the finale of the episode, we do go over the fact that White Woz is trying to gain Gates' trust, and he tries to hand over the watch that he just got, saying that once the Day of Oma happens, eventually, he doesn't actually specify him, but he does say a rider will take the field against Omagio and wield 3 watches that shouldn't exist in this timeline, and those are the key to victory. Now, to his credit, Gates does deny this and says he'll use his own power to defeat Gio on the Day of Oma, but really we know that's going to be a problem later on because Gates needs all the help he can get, since technically he's one of the weaker characters when you really think about it. And all of this will go ahead and lead us into next week's episode, where we meet a new writer that shouldn't be here, Kamen Rider Quiz. So yeah, we're setting things up for this new timeline as a new point of interest for the plot of the show, but there's a couple of questions that I'm wondering about, namely things like Schwartz being able to get to that alternate timeline when nobody else could. Does he have some sort of weapon or device or some other plot contrivance that allows him to be able to access other timelines, or is it just that he's stronger than the other 2 timejackers? We don't know, but I would like that explained sooner rather than later. Now, I do appreciate the development of Shinobi here, and I do hope we see him past just these 2 episodes, that eventually, once the timeline gets to a certain point, we'll see him in action fighting alongside Gio. Now, will he get his own series? We do know he's getting this spin-off, but not a series proper. Maybe in 2022 we'll see him come back. That would be nice. Doubtful, but still nice. I'm really hoping for that. Now, as far as White Woz is concerned, he's really the wild card here, because again, just like Woz was at the beginning, Black Woz was, we don't know a lot about him, and he knows a lot of information that nobody else does, and he's using this to his advantage. He has an idea of the timeline he's trying to preserve, so he's just as dangerous as Black Woz was. They're both very focused on making sure they're serving their apparent master, whether it's Gio or Gates. But of course, this is all boiling down to the Day of Oma being the catalyst for everything splitting one direction or another. What exactly is it about that day that makes things so special? Is it something personality-wise that happens? Is it something that somebody else is going to do? Will we see another character interfere that we haven't met yet? There's all of these things that need to be addressed before we get to that point, and it needs to make some sort of sense. Yeah, you can be involved in a series and intrigued by, oh, that's a cool design, but the thing of it is, cool designs and cool characters only get you so far. If the plot doesn't make sense, most people aren't going to stick around. I know I'm going to stick around because I just love Kamen Rider so much I will watch a thing through, but I can be very easily disappointed if they don't see through to a decent storyline. But those, of course, are my thoughts on the episode. I want to hear what you guys thought in the comments below, so let's go ahead and talk about a few things. First off, Schwartz. What is it about him that allows him to access other timelines when no one else can? Secondly, the Day of Oma. What is it about that day that's going to make Sougo become the Overlord? Is it a personality change? Is it a power-up? What is it that's going to make him become the Overlord that everybody's afraid of? And third, as far as things are concerned between Gates and White Woz, just how long will it take before White Woz gains Gates' trust? Will it be just an episode or 2, or will we have to actually wait until the Day of Oma before White Woz is able to get Gates' trust? You tell me in the comments below. And of course, during the week, you can always talk to me over on social media. On Twitter, I'm @JoshKnight1st. This has been episode 18 of Rider Rewind for episode 18 of Kamen Rider Geo, Amazing Time Future 2022. I'm Josh Knight the First. I'll see you guys again next episode.